Greetings everybody, this is Brian Jump. In this video, I'll present my lecture called Music on Earth, which is lecture 1 from my music appreciation class. The subtitle for this lecture is Questions and Answers about Humanity's Musical Activities Throughout History. When did humans begin making music? About 50,000 years ago. Around the same time that we began to bury dead people, worship gods, and make sophisticated tools. Anthropologists call people that act this way behaviorally modern humans, to be contrasted from anatomically modern humans, who were like us in every way, but did not sing songs, worship gods, bury dead people, or even wear clothes, which did not come online until about 72,000 years ago. Our ability to use language about 45,000 years ago, and anthropologists suggest that this coincided with the emergence of art, particularly cave paintings and figurine sculptures. How do we know anything about ancient music? Well, there is evidence, and there are 4 basic kinds of evidence for human music making. There are drawings and other graphic depictions of musicians and instruments. There are physical remains of instruments themselves. Literature and record books that cover music and musicians. And notated music, which is the rarest and most sought after form of evidence. What's the oldest piece of evidence for human music making? It's a 42,000-year-old bone flute made from the wing of a vulture. It was found in a cave in southern Germany called Hohel-Fels, and also in this cave is the very first known piece of representative art, the Venus of Hohel-Fels, which is a woman-shaped figurine, found in Hohel-Fels cave, along with a 42,000-year-old bone flute. How did music get passed down through the ages? Music got passed down through the ages by oral tradition. Until the invention of accurate musical notation happened 1,000 years ago, music was carried on solely as an oral tradition. An oral tradition is one in which customs, stories, art, and music are passed down through the generations via memory and person-to-person contact. Due to the inaccurate nature of transmitting information in this way, oral traditions and their products change slowly over time. People often learn songs from their parents and grandparents, but teach different versions of those same songs to their own children and grandchildren. This is known as the folk process. After many generations, the songs of one's great-great-great-grandparents are not the same songs as one's great-great-great-grandchildren. Because of this phenomenon, we don't know exactly how the music of prehistory sounded. Vague notions only. What other evidence is there for prehistoric music making? Cave paintings have provided researchers with a peculiar form of evidence. Most of the evidence for prehistoric music making comes from the remains of musical instruments and from artistic renderings of musicians. Parietal art is found on the walls and ceilings of caves and often takes the form of animal paintings. These paintings are often in acoustically lively portions of the caves that are beset with echo, and researchers think that the people selected these locations because of these lively acoustic properties. Anyone who's ever experienced a naturally occurring acoustic chamber can understand why ancient people favored these sites. The sound produced inside these chambers is often beset by otherworldly amounts of echo, resonance, and reverberation. A single note sung inside a cave or at the bottom of a canyon becomes an all-encompassing wraparound cascade of sound. No doubt these acoustic properties within the caves would have proved useful to shamans and religious mystics trying to summon the appropriate feeling of awe from their congregants. Given the acoustic and artistic nature of these locations, it's likely that cave painting sites were the venues for humanity's first musical performances. What happened musically once people moved out of the caves? Well, music flourished. Thousands of years after humans performed ceremonial rituals inside painted caves, They formed agricultural societies in fertile regions around the globe. The first permanent settlements show up in the archaeological record about 15,000 years ago. And by 10,000 years ago, there were settled societies in Egypt, in central China, in the Indus River Valley, in Mesoamerica, the Andes mountain portion of South America, and of course in Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, which is thought to be the oldest civilization on Earth. So what physical evidence for music making exists from ancient settlements? In ruins from ancient Mesopotamia, archaeologists found depictions of human music making and remains of musical instruments. One piece of evidence is the Standard of Ur, which is a decorated wooden box dug up in the 1950s from an ancient Sumerian cemetery, dating from around 2600 BC. The Sumerians were one of the first cultures on Earth. They lived about 4,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. One of the figures depicted on the Standard of Ur is a musician playing a lyre. A lyre is a harp-like instrument that was common during antiquity. It had several high-tension strings that were tuned to pitch and plucked with fingers or with a plectrum. So the Standard of Ur was a box that has pictures of people at a banquet, and one of the people at the banquet is playing a lyre. Also found in the cemetery were actual musical instruments. One is the Queen's Lyre, which was found in the grave of Queen Puabai. And these artifacts are thought to be the world's oldest surviving string instruments. So this is actually what it was, like a fossil, basically, in the dirt, and this on the left is a reconstruction of the lyre. Notice the bowl. The bowl had religious significance to the Sumerians, and evidence suggests that music was used for worship ceremonies by the ancient Sumerians. What role has music played in the societies of the world? Despite some subtle differences, music's role in society has been basically the same for all cultures throughout human history. All societies on Earth have employed music in similar ways. For religious purposes, coupled with dancing and poetry for dramatic effect, to enhance worship ceremonies and rites of passage, and to accompany everyday activities like working. Are there musical differences between cultures? Some differences exist. In sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, music is interwoven into everyday life to a much greater extent than it is in most other cultures. There are songs for pulling in the fishing nets, songs for puberty rites, songs for funerals, songs for warriors, songs for hoeing the fields, etc. For sub-Saharan Africans, nearly every activity encountered in daily life has an accompanying song. Other differences among the world's music include interval sizes, distance between notes, scale systems, theories of note arrangement, and instrumentation, choice of musical device. The differences are noticeable but rarely profound. What is remarkable are the similarities. Singing, for example, is inherent to every culture. Have reliable notation systems been invented to record music? Many notation systems exist, but most can only jog memory, not reliably record. Only Western music has evolved a reliable notation system for music, but it only dates to the Middle Ages. For most of history, Western music was an oral tradition, like every other musical tradition on Earth. Besides the West, some cultures have devised a solfeggio-based system of notation. However, these systems are used for jogging the memory only, not for accurate record-keeping. So, a solfeggio-based notation system uses letters of the alphabet or syllables to represent the notes of the scale. The West does this, the East does this. Most of the world over uses a solfeggio-based system. However, the nuance and stylistic flourish of Indian music, though notated with a solfeggio-based system called sargam, cannot be thoroughly learned by reading, but only by imitating teachers. Are there any universal musical attributes among the world's cultures? Improvising is prevalent. Improvisation, which is the act of composing and performing without preparation, imbues most of the world's musical traditions, including those of India and sub-Saharan Africa. In the West, improvisation is to be found in several forms of music, including blues and jazz, where it serves a critical component to the music's aesthetic. If improvising is prevalent, singing is universal. However, different cultures strive for different tone qualities. Some musical traditions call for timbres that include shouts, growls, whispers, and cries in their singing. Here in the West, smooth, melodious singing is what's desirable. What kind of instruments exist throughout the world? Are there many kinds? The world's musicians play similar instruments made from similar raw materials, but many varieties exist. Due to this abundance, musicologists have divided them into 4 categories. Chordophones, which are instruments featuring high-tension strings for plucking or strumming. Aerophones, which are instruments featuring a length of tube or pipe through which a column of air is blown. Membranophones, which feature high-tension membranes held taut over a resonating receptacle, also known as drums. And ideophones, which feature resonating materials like wood or metal to be used as scrapers, bells, gongs, xylophones, etc. What do most of the world's musical traditions have in common? Scale theory exists in music of almost every culture. A scale is a collection of notes from which to derive melody. They function like a word bank for music. A scale provides a musician with this certainty: just use these notes here and everything will sound good. So depicted here is a major scale. Those 7 notes plus an octave sound reasonably good together no matter what order you play them in. Scale theory exists in the music of almost every culture. Here in the West, we are familiar with the major-minor scale system, which uses tonal centers to form a collection of distinct but interacting keys. So, major scales and minor scales. We have a system that organizes those 2 varieties. Many cultures employ a system of pentatonic scales instead of the major-minor system. So pentatonic scale has 5 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and an octave. Most of the world's cultures use the pentatonic scale. Not all use the major-minor system. What is the most important invention in history? Writing is the most significant invention in history because it illuminates our view of ancient people. It was invented principally for the purpose of record-keeping. Clay tablets known as cuneiform were marked up with pictograms and ideograms using a wedge-shaped stylus and left to dry. Invented in Mesopotamia around 5,000 years ago and independently in China and Mesoamerica sometime after. When did people begin trying to write music down? Humanity's first efforts to notate music came soon after the birth of writing. The birth of writing 5,000 years ago marked the beginning of music history. The first written evidence for music is pictograms featured on cuneiform tablets that display harp-shaped characters. The earliest composer whose name is known to us is Enheduanna. She was an Akkadian princess and priestess who lived around the year 2300 BC. Some of the lyrics to her moon god hymns exist, but no music. The earliest known music, a melody in notation, was found on a clay tablet dating from around 1450 to 1250 BC. Discovered in modern-day Syria, among the ruins of the ancient city of Ugarit, the tablet is part of a collection of similar cuneiform artifacts, and contains writing in a Sumerian dialect known as Hurrian, and a hymn to Nikal, who is the wife of a moon god. The music in the tablets are referred to as the Hurrian songs, or as the Hurrian cult hymns. In the 1970s, a team of archaeologists and musicologists, led by Ann Kilner from the University of California, deciphered one of the tablet's melodies and published a short booklet and audio recording called Sounds from Silence. Kilner and her team discovered that the tablet contained important musical details like the intervals between the notes, the pitch set to be used for the melody, and stipulations for performance. The tablet suggests that the music is to be a single voice accompanied by a lyre. This is a lyre here on the right, a small harp. The problem with studying the Hurrian songs from a historical perspective is that not all historians agree with Kilner's interpretation. A History of Western Music, Burkholder, Grout, and Poliska, which is the standard university text for music history classes, gives short shrift to the Hurrian songs by mentioning that scholars have proposed possible transcriptions for the music, but the notation is too poorly understood to be read with confidence. On the other hand, musicologist Richard Taruskin seems to lend credence to Kilner's research when he describes in detail the Hurrian songs in the Oxford History of Western Music. In any case, the point is that none of the music from ancient times can be interpreted with full accuracy. Is there any notated music from societies that came along after Mesopotamia? Yes, there is some, but not much. Through an exceptionally long series of conquests, shifting kingdoms, dynastic successions, and assimilations, civilizations spread throughout the Mediterranean region. Here's Greece, here's Italy, Turkey. Some notable examples of these civilizations include the Egyptians, the Greeks, and the Romans. The most influential of these ancient people were the ancient Greeks. The Greeks left behind a significant musical heritage, including theoretical treatises, philosophies of music, and some actual pieces of music. Musicologists have several of note that are reasonably intact and reasonably decipherable. They are the Stasimon chorus, which is part of the epic play called Orestes, written by Euripides in 408 BC. We have the Delphic hymns, which consist of 2 hymns written in reverence to Apollo in 138 and 128 BC, so there's 2 of them. That's these tablets here. And the Epitaphysiklos, which is a complete melody and set of words scrawled onto a tombstone dating from the 1st century AD. It's this Epitaphysiklos that is most decipherable. Where and when did music finally make the leap from an oral tradition to a written one? Music in Western Europe transitioned from an oral tradition to a written one around the year AD 900. Here's how it happened. The rise of Christianity during the 4th and 5th centuries AD spread a common religion throughout Europe. A large repertoire of plain chant evolved around Christian worship ceremonies. A need to standardize the Christian liturgy provided the selection pressure necessary for the development of notation. The popes wanted the same songs sung the same way in all the churches of Christendom. The development of notation began around the year AD 900 and was fully developed by about 1500. What is significant about American popular music? Beginning with the popularity of jazz in the 1920s, American popular music has had an outsized influence on the world's musical trends. Today, most of the world's cultures employ Western conventions in their musical systems. In many areas of the world, non-Western and Western music coexist and intermingle. However, almost all the world's pop music is of an American variety. Here's the basic trajectory of American popular music. Jazz emerged about 1920 and spawned rhythm and blues in 1945. Rhythm and blues spawned rock and roll in 1955 and soul in 1965. A combination of rock and roll, soul, and rhythm and blues spawned disco in 1974. Hip-hop, which amalgamated all pop styles, was invented in 1978. Here's a summary of this lecture. The birth of music happened 50,000 years ago at the hands of behaviorally modern humans. Music is primarily an oral tradition, which means it's transmitted through the generations by word of mouth. Societies throughout human history have employed music the same way, for religious purposes, to enhance dancing, to accompany ceremonies, and to keep time at work. Prehistoric music can be studied through artifacts and the locations of parietal art. About 10,000 years ago, people learned how to grow a surplus of food, build permanent settlements, and form state-organized societies. Consequently, they developed art, music, and other forms of culture. The invention of writing, which emerged about 5,000 years ago, provided a reliable mechanism to record humanity's music-making activities. Musical evidence from ancient cities include artifacts like the Standard of Ur, which is a wooden box with pictures of people and musicians on it, and a clay tablet containing the Hurrian called hymns, which is the oldest piece of arguably decipherable music on Earth. The oldest composer whose name is known to us is Enheduanna, a Sumerian high priestess from the city of Ur, who lived about 2300 BC. The first efforts to notate music emerged in ancient Mesopotamia, later in ancient Greece, and still later in ancient Rome. The rise of Christianity and its musical traditions led to the conditions that fostered the development of modern notation, which began around the year AD 900. American popular music, which features a mix of European and African musical techniques, has dominated the world's music markets for the past 100 years. Here are the main points. Music has existed for 50,000 years, primarily as an oral tradition. It is difficult to study oral traditions because of the folk process. Music in Western Europe transitioned from an oral tradition to a written one around the year AD 900. And American popular music features a mix of African and European musical traditions and is by far the world's most influential form of music. Quiz. Review the material and keep track of your score. What term do anthropologists use to refer to prehistoric people that looked and acted the same way we do today? A. Behaviorally modern humans. B. Anatomically modern humans. C. Cavemen. Or D. Australopithecus. The answer is A. Behaviorally modern humans. Anthropologists refer to humans that were anatomically and behaviorally modern as behaviorally modern humans. They buried their dead, participated in religious ceremony, and made music. What is an oral tradition? Is it A. a set of behaviors that are passed down through the generations via genetics? Is it B. a type of ritual that features ring shouts and polyrhythmic drumming? C. a manner of transmitting customs through person-to-person contact? Or D. a type of mannerism learned by imitating animals? The answer is C. a manner of transmitting customs through person-to-person contact. Oral traditions include stories, art, and music that are passed down through the generations via memory and person-to-person contact. What do anthropologists call the phenomenon of slow alteration and change that occurs to the products of oral traditions? A. the folk process. B. the oral tradition paradox. C. the theory of behavioral shift. Or D. the evolution of thoughts and actions. The answer is A. the folk process. The folk process describes the inaccurate transmission of oral traditions such as songs, stories, and poems. For example, people often learn songs from their parents and grandparents, but teach different versions of those same songs to their own children and grandchildren. What is the oldest piece of evidence proving the existence of human music making? Is it A. cave paintings depicting people playing lyres? B. a flute made from the wing of a vulture? C. a treatise from ancient Greece depicting harmony and rhythm? Or D. ancient Sumerian hymns? It's B. a flute made from the wing of a vulture. The oldest piece of archaeological evidence for human music making is a 42,000-year-old bone flute made from the wing of a vulture. What evidence of human music making do researchers garner from the sites of parietal art? A. the sites were chosen to feature flute solos. B. the sites were chosen for their favorable visual properties. C. the sites were located inside echo chambers that enhanced ceremony and ritual. Or D. the sites were located near clans of the cave bear. The answer is C. The sites were located inside echo chambers that enhanced ceremony and ritual. Parietal artwork, cave paintings, are in echo-laden portions of caves. Archaeologists are certain that these locations were used by prehistoric people for religious ceremonies, and that it is likely that ancient people selected these locations based on their lively acoustic properties. What piece of musical evidence exists from ancient Sumer? Is it A, the Standard of Ur, B, the Bells of Gondor, C, Crown of the King of the Golden Hall, or D, Paintings of Enheduanna? The answer is A, the Standard of Ur. In modern-day Iraq, archaeologists found the Standard of Ur, which is a decorated wooden box dug up in the 1950s from an ancient Sumerian cemetery, dating from around 2600 BC. The Sumerians were one of the first cultures on Earth. They lived about 4,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. All cultures use music to enhance ritual and A, guide fishing, B, hunt game, C, enhance life, or D, accompany dancing. The answer is D, accompanying dancing. All societies on Earth have employed music in similar ways. Music around the world has been used for religious purposes, coupled with dancing and poetry for dramatic effect, used to enhance worship ceremonies and rites of passage, and used to accompany everyday activities like working. What characteristics are common to the music of all cultures? A, the use of ideophones, B, the use of the voice, C, the employment of scales, or D, the employment of syncopation. The answer is B, the use of the voice. Singing is found in all cultures and societies. Different cultures strive for different tone qualities. Some musical traditions call for timbres that include shouts, growls, whispers, and cries. Here in the West, smooth, melodious singing is preferred. What kind of music notation uses letters of the alphabet or syllables to represent notes of the scale? A, solfeggio, B, dazen, C, pneumatic, or D, modal? The answer is A, solfeggio. Some cultures have a solfeggio-based system of notation, but these systems are used for jogging the memory, not for accurate record-keeping. A solfeggio-based notation system uses letters of the alphabet or syllables to represent the notes of the scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do are the familiar syllables. What is the oldest piece of truly decipherable music? A, Hurrian cult hymns, B, epitaph Aeschylus, C, Delphic hymns to Apollo, or D, Euripides? The answer is B, epitaph Aeschylus. The most complete and well-understood piece of this lot is this epitaph. Found in present-day Turkey, it exists in a form of ancient Greek notation that features symbols above the text. Musicologists are confident that they know how it is supposed to sound. The epitaph Aeschylus is a complete melody and set of words scrawled onto a tombstone dating from the 1st century AD. It's 2,000 years old, almost. Where and when was accurate musical notation invented? A, European Middle Ages between AD 900 and 1300. B, Ancient Sumer, about 3500 BC. C, Ancient Greece, about 800 BC. Or D, China, AD 500. The first accurate notation system was definitely invented in the European Middle Ages between AD 900 and 1300. A large repertoire of plain chant evolved around Christian worship ceremonies. A need to standardize the Christian liturgy provided the selection pressure necessary for the development of notation. The popes wanted the same song sung the same way in all the churches of Christendom, hence a need for notation that was accurate. What is unique about American popular music? A, it uses a new system of music. B, its musicians are steeped in oral traditions. C, it represents a marriage of European and African musical systems. Or D, it employs microtones and polyrhythms. The answer is C. It represents a marriage of European and African musical systems. The most noteworthy aspect of American popular music is that it came about through the marriage of European and African musical systems. Jazz, for instance, features black folk traditions like blues and gospel, melded with European instruments and conventions of composition. Thanks. Did you keep track of your score? If you got less than 90% of the questions right, then study the material and take the quiz again. Make note cards of all the important concepts, facts, and times. Then drill yourself on the material until you know it by heart.